Good morning, Mr. Brennan.
Good morning. How are you?
Mr. Brennan, is it okay if we are recording this meeting just for logistical purposes?
Sure. There's a little bit of construction outside if you hear some background noise, but yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
A 25-year veteran of the CIA. John knows what our national security demands.
No, I have no confidence in a guy like Brennan. I think he's a total lowlife.
He is one of the hardest working public servants I've ever seen. I'm not sure he's slept in 4 years.
We've met Edward Snowden in our previous season, and we're hoping to have him as a guest also here, just to have the different point of views. You know, certain point of views give richness and some taste for the program that we're developing. So I just wanted to refresh the memories, or just to say that we'll have a small part of talking about Edward Snowden, especially that cyber attacks now is something important, the hacks on elections. So there's all things that he's been talking about before. Is that okay?
Sure, as long as I don't have to appear with Edward Snowden. Feel free to raise the issue. I have some serious concerns about him and what he has done, but you should feel free to be able to raise it during the interview. No problem at all.
Sure.
John Brennan is not a good man. This is the man who's on top of the CIA. He understands how the work of intelligence works, but he repeats the lie.
Chairman Feinstein, Vice Chairman Chambliss, members of the committee, I am honored to appear before you today as the President's nominee to...
Would you halt, please? We'll ask the police to please remove this woman. Thank you very much.
9 out of 10 people they had killed were innocent. They were not the targets. And then we put people like Daniel Hale, who told us the truth, without which we would not have known exactly how many innocent people were dying as a result of these drone strikes. And we put him in prison and say he is the criminal. And we let people like John Brennan go out and give interviews where they say, oh yes, whistleblowers are traitors. They're terrible people. They cause harm to our democracy.
We welcome everyone here, that we expect no clapping, we expect no hissing, we expect no demonstration in this room. This is a very serious hearing. I will stop the hearing and I will ask the room to be cleared. So know that. Please continue, Mr. Brennan.
Thank you, Chairman. I am honored to appear before you today as the President's nominee to lead the Central Intelligence Agency.
So even, sensitive issues, whether you want to talk about, the torture program or drones or whatever else, feel free to do that, because I do think that there is a lot of misunderstanding out there.
Hello, Governor.
Hello, where are you calling from?
I'm from LA, sir.
Los Angeles?
Yes, sir.
The presidency is a serious job that requires sound judgment and good ideas. And there's no doubt in my mind that Jeb Bush has the experience and the character to be a great president.
It took me around 3 years to prepare my roadmap. I have a mission to understand America. If you're looking for an answer, you should know when and where and what to ask. I've changed a lot since 6 years ago, but the biggest change was understanding what and how to ask from the legend himself.
Why always why? Why is your secret the question why?
Why is the best question in the world. It can't be answered in one word, and it forces the person to think. Well, you're very good.
Thank you.
You're very curious.
Thank you.
You're obviously very on top of things. I admire you a lot. You have a nice yarmulke.
Thank you, Mr. Larry.
And I think I support what you're doing. I salute what you're doing. I thank you for doing it.
Thank you for having us. Thank you for having us here in your beautiful house.
My home is your home.
Thank you very much. Thank you for giving us this chance. And thank you for believing in what we do.
I think the more you educate people, I think children will learn a lot from this. You're doing disparate people, which I like, because you could do a Larry King and a Mike Tyson and a Bill Gates, which is three very, very different people. That's a wonderful thing, because what you're doing is you're bringing information. And that's what people want. You know, we want information. We want to learn more. When I get up every day, I want to learn more at the end of the day than I do at the beginning of the day, right? And that's what you're doing.
باجي على اللقاء الأول أقل من 24 ساعة. يعني دائما أول شيء أصعب من أي وقت ثاني، وقد تكون أهم شخصية بنقابلها بهالرحلة. مكتبها يبعد عن هالغرفة 300 متر، فهذا نوعا ما يعني معطينا بس ناقص أروح بعد شوية أحلق.
Hi, 1, 2, 3. Check. Mr. Governor.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
You had the belief that you want to go and serve your country as a president. And here, before jumping into that decision, let me go back to this fabulous book where...
I think I know where you're going.
I think it's a great country. There are a lot of great families, and it's not just 4 families or whatever. There are other people out there that are very qualified, and we've had enough Bushes.
What do you think she meant?
She meant what she said. That's the beauty of my beloved mother, was she didn't have a filter. The funny part was that she said this on national television.
Yes, twice.
Without telling me, without asking. I mean, like, you know, it was for me, it was typical Barbara Bush, and we had a good laugh about it.
This is a great American country, great country. And if we can't find more than 2 or 3 families to run for high office, that's silly, because there are great governors and great eligible people to run. And I think that Kennedy's, Clinton's, Bush's, they're just more families than that.
Even in a democratic system, we have certain royal families, at least from what we see. Kennedy, Bush's, Clinton, and I have your mother to support me with this. So, what do you think? Is it part of the American democracy?
It's not. The motivation of my brother wasn't dynastic. The motivation for me to run for governor or to run for president wasn't dynastic. The motivation of my son, who is a statewide elected official and is running for attorney general, wasn't dynastic.
You know, I thought it was appropriate to discuss a subject I know a lot about, what it's like to be president.
The last thing this country needs is another Bush. We've had it with the Bushes, and our last Bush was he did not do the great job.
I can see why people would be concerned about that. out of a country of 330 million people. There are a lot of talented people. But I thought my life experiences could be brought to bear to fix these problems that are unchecked.
The presidency is a serious job that requires sound judgment and good ideas. And there's no doubt in my mind that Jeb Bush has the experience and the character to be a great president.
When we gather together, it's not like Joseph Kennedy, apparently, like you're going to run for this and you're going to run for that. We talk about sports. We talk about our kids. We talk about normal things. There is no monarchy in the United States, and nor should there ever be one.
To anybody who said, hey, I was voting for somebody outside the system, it was time for a change. I wanted somebody who hadn't grown up in Washington, wasn't all about inside the Beltway politics. That's what I was voting for. I get that 100%. I'm with you on that. I also, however, believe in resumes. I believe experience counts. And the notion that you can run the greatest nation on earth with no experience in government, never having held elected office, is problematic for me. I think it's very naive. To elect somebody who was a reality TV star, right? And really a failed businessman who sells his name and logo, and think that man's going to run the greatest country on earth? I'm sorry.
I've seen you in a video.
Oh.
You interviewed Jeb Bush?
Yes, you're right.
Why are you here? I mean, I thought why do you have a Trump thing on?
I'm just waiting it. I'm seeing the whole thing. I'm just covering the two sides. Okay? Thank you.
It's 3 a.m. and your children are safe and asleep. But there's a phone in the White House and it's ringing. Something's happening in the world. Your vote will decide who answers that call. Whether it's someone who already knows the world's leaders, knows the military, someone tested and ready to lead in a dangerous world. It's 3 a.m. and your children are safe and asleep. Who do you want answering the phone?
I'm Hillary Clinton, and I approve this message.
I want somebody who's going to get awakened at 2 o'clock in the morning and told that we're under attack, and that person's going to know what to do. And I'll take experience over outsider any day.
This is Hillary Clinton.
Yes.
Who's an extraordinary person who, again, is a person who spent her whole life in public service.
Why did she lose?
I don't know. I don't know. People wanted a change.
Yeah, some people believe that it's a dynasty? Bushes, Clintons, Kennedys.
I can never explain why people win or lose. The world wanted a change, I guess. Not me. I've supported Hillary Clinton, and they voted for Trump. But she continues to do great work for women and to unite, the country, and she's someone I really respect.
Okay.
And here's her husband, Bill Clinton.
Yes.
And we were at a White House dinner, so we were shaking his hand. We've been to the White House, I think, twice.
In your life? Twice. The first one when?
Was with the Clintons, and the second one was with the Clintons.
And what was the reason you visited the...
I was giving a speech in Washington, D.C., and they invited me to stay and have breakfast with them. And the second time, it was a White House dinner.
Nice.
Very nice.
We've met Governor Jeb Bush, and we talked how decisions are made in the White House, especially he also belonged to another dynasty, and his grandfather, his father.
Actually, I was in the White House also with Bush.
Wow.
Yes, we ran, I guess I didn't think of it that way because we ran the Mel Gibson picture. I'm not going to get the title right. We were soldiers, and they hosted a White House screening of it.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you've been in the White House?
Yes.
And you've met the president back then?
Yes. No, that was the first time.
The first time?
Yeah.
The senior Bush?
The junior Bush.
The junior.
I met the senior Bush when I went to Kennebunkport for Points of Light, which is a bipartisan foundation that he founded. And I shook his hand. Very excited.
George W. Bush will campaign in South Carolina for his brother. As you said tonight, and you've often said, the Iraq War and your opposition to it was a sign of your good judgment. In 2008, in an interview with Wolf Blitzer talking about President George W. Bush's conduct of the war, you said you were surprised that Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi didn't try to impeach him. When you were asked what you meant by that, you said, for the war. For the war. He lied. He got us into the war with lies.
Obviously, the war in Iraq was a big, fat mistake.
Ask the Kurds. Ask other minorities in the country. I think it's pretty clear that he had used chemical weapons in the past. Did they find weapons of mass destruction? No, they didn't. But that doesn't mean that they didn't exist.
It took Jeb Bush, when he announced for president, took him 5 days. He went back. It was a mistake. It wasn't a mistake. Took him 5 days before his people told him what to say. And he ultimately said, it was a mistake.
I never thought that we should have invaded Iraq. I think that was a terrible and tragic mistake. But I do think that George W. Bush believed that Saddam Hussein was a real threat to the region and that he had weapons of mass destruction. And so, although I think George W. Bush's heart was in the right place, I think it was a flawed decision.
We have two Bush administrations or two Bush presidents, and there's some similarities and there's some differences in the situation of America.
From left to right, I think I know George and Jeb.
Hi.
And Marvin.
Hi.
And Neil. Which is the chip off the old block, Dad?
They're all the same. They're all independent. They're all each has its own identity. They live in 4 different states, and I'm proud of every one of them.
I'd like you to read this loudly and this letter, if you don't mind.
Sure. Dear Dad, at around 9:30 a.m., I gave the order to SecDef, Secretary of Defense, to execute the war plan for Operation Iraqi Freedom. In spite of the fact that I had decided a few months ago to use force, if need be, to liberate Iraq and rid the country of weapons of mass destruction, the decision was an emotional one. I do pray few will lose life. Iraq will be free, the world will be safer. The emotion of the moment has passed, and now I will wait word on the covert action that is taking place. I know what you went through. Love, George.
We should have never been in Iraq. We have destabilized the Middle East.
So here's the deal. I'm sick and tired of Barack Obama blaming my brother for all of the problems that he's had. And frankly, I could care less about the insults that Donald Trump gives to me. It's blood sport for him. He enjoys it, and I'm glad he's happy about it. But I am sick and tired of him going after my family. My dad is the greatest man alive in my mind. While Donald Trump was building a reality TV show, my brother was building a security apparatus to keep us safe, and I'm proud of what he did.
What do we want the men and women who work with us to say when we are no longer there? That we were more driven to succeed than anyone around us? Or that we stopped to ask if a sick child had gotten better and stayed a moment there to trade a word of friendship? Well, Dad, we're going to remember you for exactly that and much more. And we're going to miss you. Your decency, sincerity, and kind soul will stay with us forever. So through our tears, let us know the blessings of knowing and loving you, a great and noble man, the best father a son or daughter could have. And in our grief, let us smile knowing that Dad is hugging Robin and holding Mom's hand again.
After spending 4 days in Florida with its governor, whom I was really thankful for his hospitality, it's time to move. It's time to resume my road trip and go to Washington, D.C., 1,000 miles away.
رابع يوم بالموتر هوم وبلشت الحوادث. تعال اراويك. تعال. تفضل. شوف دعمنا واحنا نصفط حق محطة البنزين، بس ان شاء الله الامور طيبة. الى واشنطن.
For the sake of our principles, for the sake of the Kuwaiti people, we stood our ground. Tonight, Kuwait is free.
But I want to say one thing to the American people. I did not have sexual relations with that woman. These allegations are false, and I need to go back to work for the American people.
United States military forces captured Saddam Hussein alive.
The United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden, the leader of Al-Qaeda.
I have joined the political arena so that the powerful can no longer beat up on people who cannot defend themselves. Nobody knows the system better than me, which is why I alone can fix it.
America is back. I made it clear to President Putin, in a manner very different from my predecessor, that the days of the United States rolling over in the face of Russia's aggressive actions, interfering with our elections, cyber attacks, poisoning its citizens, are over.
John Brennan, the previous CIA director, a person that served under 6 different presidents. I was a bit worried what I can ask and what I can't, but he said على كيفك in Arabic, so that was a good starting point.
Thank you very much. So just to revise what we've gonna discuss in the upcoming hour and a half. So it's CIA in general, your career,
certain accusations, of course.
I'll call it accusations, but some believe that they're facts.
Sure.
Thank you very much. Okay. So على كيفك is purely Saudi.
Well, I lived in Saudi Arabia for 5 years. My first visit to the White House, it was George H.W. Bush, and it was shortly after Iraq invaded Kuwait. And so I was an analyst on the Middle East and on terrorism. And the president wanted to understand what the Iraqis would do in the event that the United States took action to push the Iraqi military out of Kuwait. And I was young, 35 years or so at the time. And it really, I felt the weight of my responsibilities. Here I was, I had been in the CIA for a little over 10 years. I had grew up in a middle-class neighborhood in New Jersey, and I was talking to really the most powerful person in the world, and I was representing the most powerful intelligence organization in the world. And it's a very intimidating experience. I wanted to make sure that I shared everything I knew with President Bush, but I wanted to make sure I didn't make any mistakes. I didn't provide analysis that was wrong. And so therefore, I was very careful in terms of what I said.
My dad responded via fax. Back then they had faxes. Dear George, your handwritten note just received touched my heart. You're doing the right thing. Your decision just made is the toughest decision you've had to make up until now. But you made it with strength and with compassion. It's right to worry about the loss of innocent life, be it Iraqi or American, but you've done what you had to do. Maybe it helps a tiny bit as you face the toughest bunch of problems any president since Lincoln has faced. You carry the burden with strength and grace.
Now, President George Bush, the older George Bush, he used to be CIA director before he became president. And so...
In 1977.
Yeah. And so I was not only talking to the President of the United States, I was talking to a former director of CIA. And so he had a wealth of knowledge. He had a wealth of knowledge about the Middle East, about intelligence. But he had a very soothing personality. He put me at ease right away and really wanted to learn what I knew. And so therefore, although it was very intimidating when I went in, I felt really good afterward because I felt as though I was contributing to his decision-making process.
That was a common war against Iraq between the first Bush and the second Bush. The first was based on facts.
The second, it turned that those facts weren't accurate. When you talk about the chemical weapons in Iraq, how should history digest that period where there was a claim from great countries saying that there is a certain type of weapon in a country and that's the main reason why we need to go and stop that from developing?
Well, I'm no expert on this. I would not say categorically that Saddam Hussein did not have chemical weapons. I would not say that.
As he was going to make some very, very important decisions, including sending U.S. military troops to fight Saddam's army. So it was my first visit to the White House, but I had thousands of visits afterward. I worked in the White House, but that one is most memorable, and it's, I think, forever etched in my mind's eye.
Do you live in the street, sir? Are you homeless?
Yes, I'm homeless, yes.
And is it 10 years ago you were serving your country in Afghanistan?
No, it was almost 20 years.
After discussing the Iraqi war and the process of making that decision, a big question came out, which is, how are decisions made in the White House? Many of the speakers that I've met, I've asked them, how does the decision process happen in the White House? We know the common thing, which is Congress influence, the party that the president belonged to, the president himself and his friends. Who else?
Classically, we think, oh, the president and his, national security advisor, his minister of justice overseas, but the attorney general in the United States. And all of the people in his cabinet, sit down and they do a rundown on these are the issues of the day. We've got reports from the briefing book, and people come in from the different agencies, and they kind of keep everyone on the same page.
Making decisions in the White House is not a one-man show. There is an obvious process of the decision making, which is, of course, it's the House of the People at the beginning, and it's also the president have saying in it. The party that supported that president, but who else? Who participate in the decision making in the American White House?
Well, first of all, don't forget the Congress. This is, we have representative democracy. We have divided government. Our founders did not envision Washington having this enormous power, so they split the power between the judiciary and the executive branch and Congress. So presidents have to share power with Congress to be effective.
Well, the decision-making process does take place in the White House as far as the most important policy decisions. The president will chair National Security Council meetings. It'll be the different members of his cabinet, members of the intelligence community.
Inside the White House, I think there are 2 or 3 key people. One would be the chief of staff. That person basically manages this complex beast that there's so many different things going on. There's crisis you have to deal with. You want to stay focused on your agenda. So having a strong chief of staff matters. And then I would say the National Security Advisor is of equal importance as it relates to intelligence, national defense, diplomacy, coordinating the vast foreign policy array of departments and bureaus really matters a lot as well.
The relationship between the CIA and the White House is a very important one. The CIA is responsible for providing objective information, intelligence, and analysis to the president and others so they make decisions. There are times when CIA directors and officers will go to the White House and say things that a president doesn't like because it's inconsistent with what a president wants to do. But throughout my time as a CIA officer, I always felt that although presidents might have been annoyed at what they heard, they appreciated hearing CIA's views because they needed to take that into account before they would make their decision.
And that still happens to some extent. But I think this was particularly clear in the Trump administration, But we saw it in the Bush administration, we saw it in the Obama administration, we see it now today in the Biden administration. There's not really long-term planning in the White House anymore. Because of the American political culture, the White House has become reactive to events.
In this country, we have a democracy, right? That's what they call it. And each person has a voice to say what they think, right? So you got that. But also you have the forces, the money, that will suppress you to make your voice not heard. They don't want to hear your voice. They don't want to hear that.
We typically define the elite in the United States, by economic influence. So you are talking about the heads of companies, the heads of industries, or those who are very influential within them, but it's not limited to them. We would also say there's a media elite. And this is not just because this person has a voice and everyone listens to them. It's because the media in the United States itself is also a corporate structure.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
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 But then also, there are a lot of other influences on a president and on those policymakers. There's what is said on TV, in the news networks, in the media.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
A president, a Secretary of State, a Secretary of Defense, they are people, they're individuals. And just like any of us, they have people who are whispering in their ear.
You know, envision there's 330 million people living here. Presidents come in. My dad, for example, had thousands of friends. He would be overwhelmed with people wanting him to succeed and giving out what we call free advice. If he just was, you know, taking all incoming, you have to have some structure, or it's just overwhelming. You also have to. The president really has to believe what he believes and has to lay it out so people follow. Without that, you know, you have chaos if you don't have, you know, with all the unofficial back channels and all that, it gets crazy. So I think the more effective presidents listen. They will not be put into a bubble, but they have to have a structure around them and a discipline to be able to carry it out.
In this country, if you're famous, a celebrity, you know, you have all the money, everything, and that's what people like. But if you're just a person, just one person, only you alone, right? You're nothing. You are nothing.
Look for Jeb Bush on YouTube. Yeah. I want to see all your content.
It's not true, all I can tell you.
No, it's not every video. You get my point. So there is multiple factors that gives you the feeling that you're choosing what you're seeing, but truly you're not. You're controlled in a way. Like.
No, I totally agree. I didn't understand your question, your point. You're absolutely right. And Facebook may be the worst, worst in the sense that the most powerful insights they get for all the interactions.
You're having today a conversation with a friend from Microsoft. You're having a guest like Bill Gates or Zuckerberg in a security conference. I even remember the phrase that described Zuckerberg.
You know, if Facebook were a country, Mark would be the president of the largest country in the world because you have more users than the biggest countries in the world.
Now it's corporate world.
You're absolutely right. The power in the world, certainly the economic power, the cyber power, is now no longer in the exclusive possession of the member nations of the United Nations. It is in the power of Mr. Zuckerberg or other tech giants, even some small companies like the company that you referred to from Israel. a highly advanced tech company that is in the data mining business, right? That's what we're talking about here.
20 years ago, Bush, Kennedy, Clinton, people understand power. The definition of power. Power is related to certain names. When we say Zuckerberg now, is it a name that reflects power?
I think so. I mean, it's certainly a name that reflects innovation and being on the cutting edge of things. And I think people, no matter what people's feelings about Facebook or my brother, I think it's a name that you certainly respect for driving new sectors and pushing us forward into the future. So I think, to me, I never dreamed that I would have a name like that. I always thought, you look around New York City and you see the Rockefeller this and all of the, even like Oprah Winfrey, those are the names that people really know in American culture. And so I'm still, I think, wrapping my own head around the fact that our family name, has the chance to go down in history as one of those.
There's the invisible hand in YouTube and Facebook and Google search that tells you what you think you should like. That's a little scary.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
Do you think that there should be some restriction?
This guy's gonna run into a car. I'm sorry. No, I don't. I think we need to be self-governing.
Then why don't the media? Why do the
You want to
media
ask why
highlight
the
this?
media is like President Trump?
Yes.
Because he doesn't fall into their thing. He doesn't bow to what they want.
So who controls the media?
You figure that out, you call me, but it sure the heck ain't us.
There are, 4 or 5 companies that control 80% of the common market for news in the United States.
It costs $2 billion to arrest every homeless person, right? That's what they spend on arresting the homeless. All right, because when they arrest them, you pay the police to arrest them, you pay the people in the jail, right? Feeding him, clothing him. It will cost half of that to give them homes. Do you see what I'm saying? We would save money.
Then if it's that simple, why?
Because the political will is not there. Because no one cares about the homeless. They are not a voting bloc, really. How many homeless people get to the polls to vote for Biden? No. Well, nobody cares about them. It's just a fact. They just don't care about it.
Democracy and capitalism are the essence of the United States of America. I wanted to know exactly how do they influence the decision-making process of electing a president or even helping him decide what to do.
It's so convenient to be in good terms with the United States that maybe that's the #1 economic strategy for Mexico, is to have a good relationship with the United States and with United States corporate world, which is more powerful than the presidency of the United States.
Well, I think there are people who contribute to presidential campaigns. They can then take advantage of opportunities to interact with a president once elected. All presidents of the United States will invite into the White House representatives of the business community and individuals who they know, who they like, and who also have similar views. And one of the reasons why people contribute to a president's campaign is because these people believe the president is going to do things that they like.
I mean, the Fortune 500, to have a good relationship, a good friendship with them that I built was more important to me than having it with the President of the United States. It's most important.
Your campaign is one of the most funded campaigns among others, and this is something really for us who doesn't participate in such a democratic system, doesn't really understand this system where how campaigns are funded. So, for example, knowing that 4.7 billion is invested from the medical sector into campaigns. More than 66% of the Congress men have been getting checks out of the medical sector. How do you just explain this system when you gather the money for the campaigns?
It's the government doesn't fund campaigns. We have long campaigns. You want to make sure that you have enough resources to be successful, so you raise money. There's nothing fancy about it. But here's where I would say, I can't speak for all elected officials. In fact, I would never do that. Not even close. But if someone gave me money for a campaign, and I ran, I had 4 of them, it didn't mean that I was going to change my beliefs.
We know that one-fifth of the economy in the United States is in the health and healthcare industry. And so those folks are going to try to utilize their influence to change the rules and the regulations to their benefit, both financially, but also to try to help them provide better care for patients.
Why would the medical companies spend 4.7 billion on funding?
There'd be lots of reasons. There's many different type sectors inside the healthcare economy. So pharma would want to have candidates that support accelerating clinical trials, or speeding up the process for drug approvals, or making sure that that there isn't some form of price controls, or limit liability issues. There's thousands of reasons why they would, and that's very different than the medical device sector or what doctors say. Putting aside Washington, doctors don't want to have nurse practitioners be able to directly prescribe medicines because they want the nurses to report directly to the doctor. So there's a big fight there.
This is a great question because you've managed to get a couple of the FBI's jurisdictional issues involved. You've got potential public corruption involved, you have white-collar crime, and you have drugs. So there's no secret that the pharmaceutical industry, which we call Big Pharma, plays a huge role in large cash donations to politicians. There's no question about it. The question is whether or not that translated to Congress members, even state legislators, looking the other way or allowing this kind of over-prescription to occur. My personal opinion is that it has. It has.
You're combining this gigantic part of a $4 or $5 trillion economy, 20+% of it is in the healthcare space. There's a whole multitude of aspects of this that there isn't one reason, there's literally thousands of reasons.
And so there are certainly, I think, some bad actors out there, and some examples of where people utilize their influence for economic gain. But there are also instances where some of these companies are utilizing their influence to help improve the drug discovery process. And you've got to remember, the United States really is the vehicle for drug discovery for the rest of the world.
It is, I think, inevitable that presidents will continue to be contacted by people from the outside world, but it's really important for presidents to not use, or not do things because they're trying to improve or enhance an individual's business interests. They should make decisions about foreign policy based on U.S. national security interests, not because it's in the best interests of a particular company or a particular businessman. Now, U.S. businesses operate around the globe. It's one of the things that help keeps our economy strong. So presidents will want to make sure that large companies are able to thrive internationally, that they're able to sell airplanes and other types of things. But they really have to be very careful not to allow those business interests to take precedence over national security interests. And so therefore, I think it's critically important for especially presidents not to allow any type of corrupt influences come into their decision-making.
In the pharmacy or in the medical sector, they funded more than 66% of the Congress members.
Right.
And you're saying Congress handles the budgets of FBI.
Right.
So can we say that they're all linked?
Certainly, yes. You know, if you're looking at the power structure, so you know, terrorism is a perfect example where terrorism is tactic, right? And so there are a bunch of different groups that use that tactic. They use violence and the threat of violence to try to promote their political or social goal. So right after 9/11, when the FBI was demanding from Congress huge resources to fight terrorism, there was al-Qaeda terrorism on the one hand, but they also came out and said environmental terrorism is the #1 domestic threat inside the United States, even though there's not a single homicide related to environmental activism in the United States. But there were corporations who were targeted by protesters because of their environmental impact. And those corporations had a lot of power, and they exercised that power by giving political donations to members of Congress and using that influence to have influence over the FBI, so the FBI would prioritize protest groups protesting environmental damage being done by these corporations. And Congress even passed a law making it easier to prosecute animal rights activists who engaged in illegal activities that might harm a animal facility. So, you know, that's a perfect example of how it's not a public concern, right? If you looked at terrorism in the United States, white supremacists kill far more people than any other, but the people they kill tend to be from marginalized communities. So they don't have a lot of money to give political donations to Congress, so that Congress will say to the FBI, you need to protect these, and the FBI doesn't get invited to big dinners with the people from these communities that, you know, can lavish resources on them and use their lobbying influence in Congress to get the FBI more resources for the things it wants to do. So the FBI wants a relationship with the corporate power brokers that it can then leverage to get more power from Congress and more resources from Congress.
Is that a result of capitalism?
It's certainly an effect of capitalism. Absolutely. The money is what works. And I think a big part of the problem with our system now is that it's far more influence. That the amount of money that's involved in running for office is so beyond the capacity of normal people that anybody interested in serving in government as an elected representative has to seek huge donations. So of course that gives more power to rich people who can then provide the money that gets somebody elected, but then there's a bill that comes due at the end. So you can understand how their interests are then prioritized and their interests are then served through the legislation, which allows them to get richer because now it's easier for them.
It's time to leave Washington, the capital of the free world, the United States of America, the capital of democracy, or even the capital of capitalism. I'm leaving behind the White House, where decisions are made as a reflection of voices. It's not my call to decide what voices are heard in that house. But for sure, voices that are heard in this White House define the future of the United States of America and the world.
You have a very interesting way of interviewing. I've never seen or had somebody look at me so directly and constantly, which is good.